besties, it's Sarah. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reading books and deeming whether or not they're worth the hype. Also, what they all have in common is that they are a part of series, because for the month of March on my Patreon we're actually doing a readathon called Say That Series, and so I was like, how do I make a concept for my main channel and also participate in my own readathon? I also just think it's fun every once in a while to be the person who decides whether or not things are worth the hype. The first book that we have is Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. This is technically a companion book series. This is beyond hyped up. So many people put this on their favorites list last year. And then next I'm going to be reading Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. This is the sequel to Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I've been hearing a lot of buzz about this. A lot of people have been saying that it's even better than the first book. Then we have The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin. This is a book that I've been putting off for a while. I read the first book, the 5th season, last year. This series is so daunting. First of all, the books are very long, and there's just something about the way that this high fantasy is that's very hard for my brain to wrap around. So I've been very nervous to pick it up. So I feel like this video is a way to force myself, because people love this series. People keep saying that the books just get better and better. And then lastly, for the main channel video, I'm going to be reading Heartless by Elsie Silver. This is the second book in the Chestnut Spring series. This is a cowboy romance series. Did not think I'd be someone that liked cowboys, because I'm not really into like country music or horses or cows or any of that. And then lastly, I'm going to read a book exclusively for Patreon, and that is Iron Widow. This is the first book in a series. This is actually a YA fantasy series that I didn't have any interest in reading. I guess maybe it's more sci-fi, but it's about these people who like are in like these suits that are kind of like, I don't know which anime I'm trying to reference, but there's an anime where they're in these giant like robot suits, and it's kind of like that, or like the movie Pacific Rim. Are any of these references making sense? I'm not sure. The main character, her sister died working in one of these, and so she has been training to become like a co-pilot to like go in these machines so she can hunt him down and kill him. So I'm going to be doing a spoiler vlog on my Patreon for this. I'm actually also going to be doing a spoiler vlog for Heartless, but I will be talking about Heartless in this video. That's my TBR for this video. We're going to decide if these books are worth the hype. Okay, besties, I am about 30% of the way through Yours Truly by Miss Abby Jimenez, and I am really liking this. I was a little bit nervous because I've heard mostly good things, but also a little mixed things. I've gotten comments from people saying that this wasn't as good as Part of Your World, but I've also heard people say that it's better than Part of Your World. So in this book, we're following Bree, who is actually Alexis from the first book, her best friend. But life for her has not been going well lately because her brother has an autoimmune disease that has attacked his kidneys. Another bad thing that's been going on for her is that her ex-husband cheated on her, and her divorce is final soon. So she's just not having a great time, and this new guy comes on the scene and she just does not like him. He is actually a guy that has a lot of anxiety, and his whole story is that he switched hospitals because his ex-girlfriend and him broke up, and she immediately started dating his brother, and so that's been very awkward for him, and he struggles with clinical anxiety. Social situations make him really anxious and he doesn't know what to do, and I find his character like very relatable. Like, I don't have anxiety to the level that he does, but I definitely do have anxiety, and so to have a male main character that has his anxieties is very interesting. I've never read something like this before, and the way that they start kind of building their relationship is that after they get off on the wrong foot, they start writing letters to each other. Like, Jacob writes her letter to apologize for the things that they had misunderstandings about, and then she starts writing him back, and so they've been writing letters back and forth, and that's one of my favorite things in romance books, when people do that. I think it's so cute. Okay, besties, I have finished Yours Truly. Truly, I don't know if I understand the hype. Honestly, if this had been a singular POV of Jacob, I would have been happy, because his POV was definitely my favorite. I do want to give a trigger warning for some things that happen towards the end of this that you may or may not think are spoilers, but there is a surprise pregnancy as well as mention of a miscarriage that kind of comes out of nowhere. I'm just gonna let you know, surprise pregnancy is never gonna do it for me. I'm not into surprise pregnancy. There was really not very many intimate kissing type scenes, a lot of it being because of the miscommunication and things that were happening. I think the miscommunication plot also was a huge detractor for me. Jacob is honestly such an amazing character that he kind of like carries the book. Kind of been in this mood this year where I just like, if I don't like something, I want to give it 2 stars, but I've also been trying to be in my lover era, so it's a little bit confusing. I feel like I have the 2 wolves are inside me and they're fighting. I don't know, it makes me a little bit nervous to read more Abby Jimenez, because The Friend Zone was possibly one of the worst romances I've ever read, and then Part of Your World was possibly the best romance I've ever read, and then this one just feels kind of mid. So this is kind of like a half and half, kind of I get get why it's hyped up, but I also don't get it. Like, I'm very surprised that so many people love this, but if you all told me it was because of Jacob, I would believe you. I definitely don't think it should be more hyped than Part of Your World though. Part of Your World was much better. Okay, besties, I finished Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands, and it was so cute. I don't know if I liked it more than the first one, but I still really enjoyed this. In this book, we're following Emily and Wendell as they kind of explore the edges of Fairy. They're looking for like a door to get into Fairy, and a couple of new people join them on their journeys along the way. There's like new side characters in this. I think the characters are really what make this series for me, and also kind of the depiction of fairies and how they're not necessarily like good people, like good creatures. I mean, they're like kind of evil a little bit. Let me back up and just say that the series is following a character named Emily Wilde, who is an academic that studies fairies. And so in the first book, she was going to this small, icy, snowy town to study like snow fairies so she could write things in her encyclopedia about them. And Wendell Bamblebee is her academic rival. He has been known to steal her academic work in the past, and they have a bit of a love-hate relationship. And so they have just really great banter in the first book, and so they get into a bunch of different things with the fairies that kind of live in that region, and they make a bunch of friends along the way. And there's an animal companion. Like, Emily has this dog named Shadow who has more than meets the eye going on with him. So we get recurring characters. Also my favorite little fairy character, Poe, he was in this as well. I don't know, I really feel like this is worth the hype. I will say that if you did not enjoy the first book, I don't know if you should pick this up. It is a lot more fast-paced, like you kind of get into the action a little bit quicker, but I don't know, I just feel like if you didn't like the first one, you're not gonna like this because it's a lot of the same tone and whatnot, just because we are kind of following Emily, and the way that it's written, it is her like academic journal. If you've been thinking about picking up this series, you absolutely should, just because the sequel is already out. Also, the cover is so cute. The first cover is also cute. I will literally cry myself to sleep if I find out that this is going to be a trilogy. Like, I literally will weep. I will sob. Genuinely think that this needs to be like 10 books minimum. Maybe 7. We can talk like Heather Fawcett. We can talk about it. Okay, so I finished Heartless, and I did really enjoy this. This is a babysitter age gap romance. We have Willa. She's 25. She's looking for something to do for the summer. She's best friends with the girl from the first book. And so she gets hired on the ranch to babysit this 5-year-old. And his dad is Cade, who is a single dad, takes care of his son alone. And he is 38. So that is the age gap. I liked this age gap because even though they're 13 years apart, and that is quite a lot, 25 is the age that your frontal lobe is developed. And number 2, the entire time that Willa and Cade were like getting to know each other and like falling in love, he kept thinking it was weird, their age gap. Like, he kept being like, oh my god, we can't do this, you're way too young for me. I feel like that's what age gaps should be. Like, I feel like if you're the older party, you should be concerned that you're too old. I don't personally think I liked this more than Flawless. I know I've heard a lot of people say that. This book was quite long for what it was, and there was a lot of like repetitive scenes. Like, there's a lot of scenes where they're like in the hot tub like talking. There was like 3 hot tub scenes, and I feel like we could have limited that. And also just the pacing of them getting together was very like, will they, won't they, for like a long portion of the book. And then when they started having sex, there was like too much sex. I am at a ripe old age where I don't really like graphic sex scenes that much anymore. And there were some scenes involving cum in like a mouth area that made me feel a little ill. I feel like I liked the Smut and Flawless a bit more, even though it was also pretty graphic. I just feel like it was more gratuitous in this. But overall, I did really like it. I really liked Willa as a main character. I loved her fiery energy. I loved how her and Cade got together. Also, Cade is like very curmudgeonly, and it takes him a long time to warm up to Willa. Like, he is very like resistant to her charm, but she gets along with his son so much. And I don't normally like children in books, but Luke was so cute. I really felt like he was a good addition to the story. But ultimately, I'm gonna be giving this 4 stars, and I definitely think it's worth the hype, and I'm excited to read the 3rd book. I do think I'm gonna wait a little bit longer before I read the next book because I read this so close to the first one. They kept blurring, because I also think they used the same audiobook narrators, so it took like a second to get into the new characters. Although I think the next book is about a guy named Theo who actually is not a cowboy. I think he's the one that might be a hockey player, which I would be okay with because I love hockey romance. So I'm excited to read the next one, and I do think that this is worth the hype. Okay, besties, I have finally finished The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin. I meant to update you sooner, but then I got wrapped up in the book and I never did. I listen to audiobooks a lot when I'm driving, and so it makes it hard to do vlog updates because I'm just not thinking about it. But anyway, I finished this. I'm gonna give it 4 stars. I definitely think it's worth the hype. I will say it kind of suffers from second book syndrome. I did not love it quite as much as the first book. I feel like the first book has so many big reveals, and getting to know the world is like such a feat. Like, your brain needs so much power just to understand what's going on. And so once you figure figure it all out and the big stuff happens at the end of the book, you're like, oh my god, and you just feel very accomplished. And I feel like because we already knew quite a bit going into this one, that wasn't really the case. So I forgot to say that this is the second book in the Broken Earth trilogy, the first book being the 5th season. You've probably heard of that one. The 5th season is following a couple of different characters who have the power of earthbending. And so in this world, earthbenders are like the most powerful beings, but humans, like regular humans, are afraid of them. And so they have made like a special school for them, and they have these like special handlers, and they're all very, very controlled. I tend to give that synopsis because I feel like it makes it easier to understand, like if you went in knowing that a little bit, because I really felt like my brain hurt when I was reading the first book, but it was really fun by the end of it because I felt like it was such a big reveal, like the things that we find out, and it was so great. And so in this one, we're delving a lot more into the science and the magic. I definitely think that this series is like perfectly a combination between sci-fi and fantasy. It kind of walks the line between the two. And I think the biggest issue with this sequel is that the pacing was a little bit off. We are introduced to a new perspective, which I really, really enjoy. That was probably my favorite part of the book. The other main character's point of view, I felt just was really weird. It was very different from the last book, and it just, the pacing was kind of all over the place. There was a lot of time jumps, but like a lot of the time jumps didn't make sense. Like sometimes it would be a day, sometimes it would be a week, sometimes it would be a month. And I had a hard time understanding like just how much we were covering in this, like how the length of period of time. That was a weird way to say that. I liked this a lot. I did. I'm gonna give it 4 stars, but I don't think it's the best sequel I've ever read. I'm hoping that the last book is amazing. I have heard people say first book flawless, second book, you know, second book syndrome, and then third book flawless again. So I'm really looking forward to kind of getting into the last book and seeing if it gets a little bit better, but perhaps this wasn't the best book in the series to read for a vlog where I have to say whether or not they're worth the hype, because there were definitely some issues that I had with this. Like the pacing was just, it was slow, and it took me like a week to get through this, which can be normal for a fantasy of this size, especially ones that are more complicated. But there were definitely parts of this book where my brain was like, let's hang on. It still was good. It was good. Like the writing is amazing. And like I said, I really loved the new POV that was introduced. I feel like there was a lot of complexity added, and I definitely think that there's going to be some interesting... Sorry, Billy very rudely interrupted me. That actually like scared me. I did not know she was about to bark. I think what I was saying is that this book definitely set up a lot of crazy things to happen in the last book. So perhaps this was just like, you know how second books are when they just like in the middle, they're just like not doing what the first and last ones are doing. I realized doing a whole vlog of like reading basically sequels was an interesting choice, but I am glad that I did this because I was able to pick up a lot of books that I've been meaning to pick up, because sequels are hard to get to. And also I got to participate in my readathon Slay That series. So we actually have quite a few more readathons planned on the Patreon later this year if you're interested in joining us. The readathons are for both tiers, so if you want to join the low tier or the high tier, whatever you want to join. I think the next one we're going to be doing is rereadathon, where we reread books, because I also feel like rereading is something that's hard to fit into your schedule when you want to read new things. And so we're going to have a month dedicated to that. And then after that, we're going to have a choose your own adventure readathon, which is basically going to be me doing this like web of prompts to help you pick out the books. It's gonna be really complex, so it's gonna be really fun. I actually need to start working on that because it's gonna be a lot of work on my end, but I'm very excited to present that to my patrons as well. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, I did do a spoiler vlog for Iron Widow, as well as a spoiler vlog for Heartless, if you want to see more in-depth thoughts on those 2 books. But yeah, if you made it to the end of this video, feel free to use the dog emoji in honor of Billy being rude and barking and interrupting us. I don't know if we should really be honoring her, but it's fine. You can honor her in your comments. And I thank you all so much for watching. You're all beautiful. Have a nice day.